Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Mr. Honey, and today we're going to be going over your study guide. So, once again, if you have not completed your study guide, take this time to fill in all the blanks that you have. So, you're going to take this time to fill in all the blanks, and then from there, what you're going to do, you're going to make sure that you submit with the study guide submission, and then make sure that you go through this process and make sure you got all the correct answers. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to go through this process and make it as easy as possible. So the first section we have are emotions. So you want to be able to identify the emotions in our SADFISH acronym. S being for sadness, A being for anger, D being for disgust, F is for fear, I is interest, S is for surprise. So, like I said, with S, it's sad and surprised. And then H is for happiness. Now, if y'all remember, y'all did take a mini quiz related to the facial expression. So, one of the big things is you want to be able to recognize different facial expressions and emojis of what sadfish emotion is associated with, and make sure that you understand those. So, understand those facial expressions. So, go back, check your quiz, make sure that you get those squared away. Next, moving into communication, we have a couple of key terms. The first is tact. Tact is the ability to tell someone how you feel, but keeping their feelings in mind. So you're able to talk to someone, knowing your audience, being tactful. So, for example, if you know someone who can be very sensitive about certain subjects, if you talk about those subjects with them, you would know how to approach it tactfully. In other words, if somebody, if someone's kind of, I don't know, maybe they're a little upset about something. Let's just say they're upset about a breakup they just went through. A tactful thing would be like, "Hey, are you doing okay? I heard you went through this little breakup, blah blah blah." Rather than being like the, "Hey, I heard you got dumped yesterday." You want to be tactful about it, and approach it with a sense of understanding. Next, we have empathy. This was never included in your study guides or any thing, not study guides, but this was never included in your notes. But empathy is basically putting yourself in the other person's shoes, trying to think about something from their perspective. So, trying to understand what that means. So, you want to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Next, we have I statements. Now, what you're going to be able to do with I statements is you need to make sure that one, you understand that an I statement is basically making a statement about how you feel, i.e., I. So I feel based on someone's actions. So I feel a certain way because of something someone did. I feel happy when you cook for me because it shows me that you care. Or I don't like it when you when you spread rumors about me because I thought you were my friend and friends don't do that. So you want to make sure that you are talking about these I statements in the general sense of what they are. But the big important thing is that you need to know how to recognize an I statement. And this is the biggest idea that I can give you. The more detailed we have, the better it is. So, for example, if you say, I like it when you help me study. Okay, that's good. Why do you like it? So, we want to have more detail. I like it when you help me study because it shows that you're invested in my education. So, you want to have more detail within the standpoint and also make sure that you are not doing something to the degree of having a generalization of an emotion or a generalization of um, a perceived emotion. So, for example, you know, I don't like it when you act like a jerk. Well, someone could easily turn around and be like, I didn't act like a jerk. But if you actually point out a behavior that they did, I don't like it when you take my things away from me. All right. You can actually prove to them, hey, you took stuff away from me. So it's one of those things like you want to make sure that it's something that cannot be challenged or perceived. And this goes against the idea of the you statement. So the I statement is different than the you statement. The I statement obviously is talking about someone's behavior in terms of how you feel, but the you statement blames people. So in other words, instead of saying I feel this way when you do this, a you statement is you did this, you did that, you're this, you're that, blah blah blah, and it places a lot of blame. So understand that. Next, we have in the standpoint of communication, the DOPE communication. So the D in the DOPE communication basically stands for direct, which basically means that you're being straightforward with your communication. You're being direct with it. You're not beating around the bush and thinking, well, I don't know about this, blah blah blah. No, you're straightforward with it. The O in DOPE communication basically stands for open with an objective, which means you are open to what the other person has to say and you have an objective in mind regarding that communication. So that means that you're not doing things that showcase that you're closed off. So when you're having a conversation with someone, you want to sound like you're open. You want to sound like you are okay with what they have to say and you're listening to them, which brings us to a next point. You want to talk about active listening, which means you're having eye contact, also that you're not crossing your arms, things of that nature. So next is P, which is pronounced and purposeful. So you want to make sure that your communication is well pronounced and that that it's understandable. That you're, making sure that how you are coming across is understandable and that you are using proper diction and things of that nature. But you also have a purpose behind why you are having the conversation you are having. And then next, we're going with E, which basically means making an exit. This is in the case where sometimes communication gets super, super heated, and you may need to take a breather and think about it elsewhere, then come back and continue that conversation. An exit does not mean that you do not wish to have the conversation. An exit means that you have to take time away to gather your thoughts or to calm down or something of that nature. Next, we're going into self-expression. Self-expression is basically the expression of yourself. Basically, you are expressing your thoughts, your ideas, and things through physical, written, and verbal methods. So, verbal expression, this is anything to do with how we talk. So, examples would be, just simple talking, motivational speeches. We can even go as far as looking at ideas such as like poetry, written or spoken poetry, music. So that's all spoken verbal expression. Next, you have tone. Tone basically gives context to your spoken expression. So how tone is giving context to what you say. So for example, as I mentioned, think about the word fine. You ask someone how they're doing, and they're like fine. That makes you feel like, based on the tone, that makes you feel like okay, they're doing okay. But if you ask someone, how they're doing, and they're just like fine, that right there makes you feel like okay, maybe they're annoyed, maybe they're not having the best day, that sort of stuff. So you always want to consider tone. Next, what is written expression? This can be any sort of expression regarding writing. So using your fine motor skills to write something. So this could be like a written poem. This could be written lyrics. This could be drawing. This can also be things such as, even as far as hieroglyphs, art. So this is all written. And then finally, physical expression. So, what is physical expression? This is expressing yourself physically through movement, your facial expression, and then also like dance and things of that nature, how we express ourselves. So, your facial expression, hand gestures, your body language, and even from the standpoint of the clothes you wear are an example of your physical expression. So it's expressing yourself physically using your body and the physicality surrounding you in order to express yourself. So next, what is the halo effect? It's basically that if something looks good, it is good. So for example, you look at a burger and you're just like, oh, that burger looks so delicious. Oh, I want to eat that burger so bad. So you order the burger and then you take a bite into it and it may not be as good as you thought it was. It's because that is the halo effect in full effect. You thought it would be good, but it's not that great. So it's one of those things where people present themselves in the same way. So, in order to try to be more favored by other people, they may dress a certain way, they may act a certain way, so they control their self expression in order to quote unquote hack the halo effect. Next, we have communication barriers. So, this is just example of the listed barriers. So, for example, first we have the jargon, which is unfamiliar terms and terms that are um, more so specific to an area, a region, or a field. So, for example, like in Northwestern jargon is like flex, the mezzanine, torch. This is all stuff that people outside of Northwestern may not understand. So, if they came and visited and you started talking about, oh, we're going to go meet in the mezzanine for a presentation on carrying the torch during flex, that person might be like, what does this mean? So that is another thing where a lot of times the terminology is unfamiliar and it's specific to a certain place. Next, we have emotion. This is where you have emotional attachment to either a certain subject or a certain person. And because of that emotional attachment, it gets in the way of you understanding the message. So, for example, a lot of people may have emotional attachments to, for example, politics. So they're very emotionally invested in certain sides. So no matter what the other side presents, they are so emotionally invested that they don't want to hear the other side because they're so emotionally invested. Or for example, you may emotionally feel some type of way towards someone you have a crush on. So you are so tied up in um, like how good looking they are and how you wish you could be with them and all this kind of stuff that it does not matter what they say or what kind of person they are. That emotion gets in the way of you seeing a person for who they are and processing 100% what their communication means. And once again, these are just like, just overgeneralized examples. It's not always the case 100%. All right. Lack of attention or presence of noise. Once again, the biggest thing with noise is that you need to understand that noise in its conventional sense is like actual noise, like a fan blowing, a car horn, stuff like noise like this. It gets in the way of you being able to understand what the person's trying to say. But you also have noise in the unconventional sense. Certain things like hunger, maybe a sense of urgency because your parent called you in the middle of class and they're like, or they texted you in the middle of class and they're like, oh, you need to call me back right now. So you might be thinking to yourself, like, I can't focus on class. I can't focus on work. My mom is calling me right now and she's wanting to know, she's wanting to tell me stuff and I'm so nervous. And what could it be about? So it's one of those things like noise is anything that gets in the way of that communication and your ability to have that sense of attention. Once again, I just defined noise, so we got that. A physical disability, such as speech or hearing, sometimes this gets in the way. If I take my hearing aids out, it's going to be very hard for you guys to communicate with me. And the same way is that, if you have someone who may not be able to form sounds with their mouth because of how they were born, not saying this is like, not trying to be like against all this or anything, it just is what it is. But it's one of those things where these are um, barriers that people have to face in terms of communication. So it's very important to understand that with people who may have physical disabilities regarding their ability to communicate, we need to be able to accommodate that. So maybe once again, if someone has an issue forming sounds and can't really talk, they can use sign language to convey themselves, to convey their messages. People who may have hearing impairments may be able to be accommodated using hearing aids. They may be able to, once again, utilize sign language as well. So it's one of those things like these are barriers to communication, but we need to make sure that we are accommodating and find ways around them so, people can feel like they're being listened to and respected. Physical barriers such as nonverbal communication. This is another one that can be a little confusing, but it's the idea that, for example, with a physical barrier of nonverbal communication, a lot of times what you say is not coming out of your mouth. So, for example, if I'm sitting there telling you how fantastic of a day I'm having, but at the same time I look like this and I'm looking very angry at you, and you might be like not be able to pay attention to the message I'm conveying because on one hand I am telling you about a great day I'm having, but at the same time my face does not convey that. So because of that, that may seem like an idea of where you have that nonverbal communication creating a barrier because you're trying to rationalize why does this person look angry, but at the same time they're talking about a fantastic day they're having. Another one is language and accents. You think about it, it's a big communication barrier, especially when we can't understand what someone is saying. Or, for example, if you're learning a new language and you don't understand what people say, that is going to be a communication barrier. And it's one of those things where we need to be okay with repetition. We need to be okay and open about understanding these barriers and talking about them. And then we also have stereotypes, and then this is just an overgeneralization of somebody. So when we overgeneralize something, how we communicate with someone may be impacted. So, there are some people who do take stereotypes to heart. They think that, all people of a certain race or all people of a certain gender or all people who have a certain socioeconomic status act a certain way. And because of that, they automatically think of that way, and therefore they stereotype, and how they communicate with these people and about these people can be very, very skewed. So next, we're moving into relationships. You need to know your ABCs of relationships. A being awareness, B being balance, and then also C being conscious choices. So you want to make sure that with A, you're being aware of your relationship. You need to be aware of where you stand with somebody. B, having a sense of balance, making sure that you're making time for them, but making time for yourself and having those boundaries. And lastly, C, making conscious choices. Conscious choices being that you have the choice of making certain decisions. And, it's not always that when you're in a relationship that you can, that you're going to sit there and constantly bend to the every will of someone else. You want to make sure that you are making conscious choices about your input in the relationship, and understand that you have, I guess you could say that you have a sense of control, even if you really don't feel that way. Okay, you do have a sense of control, and you do have a sense to make the choice of where you stand in a relationship, if you want the relationship, and setting those boundaries. And next, we have your 4 types of relationships. You have your casual relationships. These are people that you kind of know, but you don't really know. So these are like classmates that you may see across the room. You may know their name, but you don't really know them that well. Next, we have family relationships. These are the relationships that you were born into. They are your family, and you are related to them by blood. You have friendships that are typically born out of casual relationships, and this is where you develop a relationship with someone that isn't necessarily romantic in ways, but it isn't romantic. However, you do share a sense of details about your life. They know a little bit more about you, but it's not going anywhere beyond that. And then finally, we have romantic relationships where it's going to be more about taking that friendship to the next level. In other words, they know way more about you. They're trusted with a lot more information, and the relationship becomes more intimate. So that is where you're going with romantic relationships. And now finally, we have these essays. Now these essays, on the test, you will pick 2. Now, you don't need to fill this out for a study guide, but on the test, you're going to pick these 2 essays. So you need to go through and review what these essays are, and make sure that you've got it squared away. You've got your 2 essays ready. Once again, I've told this to both classes, I believe, that with these essays, you don't have to, write me a full novel. All right, 1 to 2 paragraphs will do just fine. All right, but that is going to conclude the study guide review for the day. So you guys take care, have a good rest of the day, and I will see you guys later.